Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Mafia, the old country. I think, maybe a little bit too excited for this game, simply because Mafia Definitive Edition is a remake of a game that does not even resemble that game at all, where the writing, the characters, the action, everything about that game I was super surprised by and loved. And so I thought this was a whole new era of Mafia games that frankly I did not care for at all beforehand, that I thought, oh, okay, this is being taken not much more seriously, but at a higher level of writing and engagement, where, you know, for better or for worse, these games don't concern themselves with the world and the gameplay too much. It's really about telling a really good story. And, you know, as far as Mafia stories go, there's only so many things you can do with it. So when I saw that, oh, they're not even going forward in time, they're going backwards to, you know, Italy, to a certain time, a certain location, but with that same tone, I was super interested and super excited, especially considering the quality from the previous game. So with Mafia the Old Country, I feel it's not quite there. It does quite a few things interestingly, but ultimately it feels kind of generic. Yes, there's cool segments where you're on horseback firing your rifle. Yes, there's these, you know, old style cars. Yes, the Italian countryside is beautiful. It's a great looking game, by the way. But the story, which is what I was really coming for, kind of felt sort of generic. Generic and predictable. You know, there's a guy who's a lowly first class, or a working hand guy, working class guy who gets picked up by the Mafia because he escapes a mine after confrontation with a guy. The Mafia says to the other guy to back off, the miner and the mining family who owns him, because they want to assert their dominance. And so he starts working for them, for this Mafia family. And so he starts working up the ranks, and of course he falls in love with the Don's daughter, and that whole tale of love, revenge, betrayal. Ooh, you know, it's kind of very predictable. It almost feels like a soap opera, but for men, for the male audience. You know, I kind of wish there was more to this, but yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day. And as I was playing through it, I kind of had to deal with that. Another thing that I think I also wasn't super fond of, even though I knew I was kind of getting into this, is that this is a very cutscene heavy, dialogue heavy game. And honestly, there are a lot of parts of this game that just feel like a walking simulator where you're listening to dialogue. And if that dialogue is not super great or super good, it's not fun. And just the characters too were much better in Mafia Definitive Edition. For example, Paulie, who has like an insecurity complex and he wants to be accepted by the group and looked up to, but also has this inferiority complex. So that was an interesting character. You had kind of the butler guy and the accountant who was this mysterious, stern father figure. You had the main guy, Morello, who was kind of the main guy who's trying to earn his respect, but also, you know, walk the line of not betraying him. And they were just, the characters were just better. They were more dynamic. And of course, there was a love interest in that story as well. And yeah, that's the thing. This follows that story almost beat for beat at the beginning, to the point where it's kind of obvious. And I don't know, I just felt like this setting, this environment of turn of the century Italy, there was so much more potential to do something really interesting and engaging and different, and, you know, come back to those core ideas. And there were, admittedly, there were some very cool concepts in this game. For example, the fact that the mine where you start, this sulfur mine, which is a awful place to be, he's working at a sulfur mine, and by the end of the game, that's where you end up for the final fight. But now the volcano or the mountain where they're mining actually becomes an active volcano and starts spewing out lava. Like, it's very artistically, thematically, it's very cool and very well done. But it just felt like there wasn't anything super new or different or challenging. Like, this could have taken place in any other environment. It's just that, you know, you had everyone with the Italian accents, and, you know, the whole, the main section of this game was the whole knife fighting, which was pretty interesting and pretty cool. Mechanically, it wasn't that sophisticated. You basically have to dodge, counter, guard break, and forward attack, swiping attack. So it really wasn't super different gameplay mechanically wise. And also story wise, I don't know, I thought there'd be something more poetic, something about how his blade is going to cut into the guy. I think of the ending of the most recent Dune movie, Part 2, where they have this knife fight, and it's very atmospheric, it's very intense, it's very poetic in a way. And I thought setting this in a European setting, they'd lean more into that, but no, it just kind of felt very, I don't know, generic. There's a girl, there's a mob boss, there's a guy. It didn't really go into a deeper poetry that I was kind of hoping for here. It just feels like this could have easily just taken place in America or, again, any other country. I think it was interesting, though, I guess, historically, to see the development of that world, of the fact, yeah, you are in Sicily, you are in this, not a backwater, but you're in this part of the world where it feels like the modern world is leaving it behind. And they all talk about going to America, and sure enough, by the end of the game, one of the main characters gets to America. But it's this feeling of these dirt roads, these cobblestone barriers, this idea that there's this land that is etched in centuries of history and warfare, and it's only recently that essentially the invention of cars and new technologies are making these roads and these things and these even nomenclatures and these ideals and ways of life obsolete. And that's the main kind of pull that it says to the main characters to leave this country and go to America, where they can assimilate and find a new life, that they're not beholden and have to stay in a land of blood feuds and violence and gangs. And yet, ironically, they bring that very same violence and gang thievery to the new world and the advanced civilized world that they go to, that welcomes them in and also exploits them at the same time. So it's more interesting historically to be immersed in that environment and to understand what the viewpoint of an immigrant, of a gangster, of what is an Italian, people don't say Italian American anymore. It's kind of a very passe kind of word, but you can understand from this perspective and this viewpoint that this Sicily to New York is such an alien landscape, and it's kind of a Wild West vibe to it. And I never understood the whole aspect of spaghetti westerns, because apparently Italians really, really liked cowboy movies, because it's actually kind of the same environment. You have these, there's a Mexican element to those movies as well, but you have these, gringos and these cowboys, and they're shooting each other in this Wild West style thing in an arid climate. It's kind of similar to the Italian environment, and so I kind of understood from this game why they would be so interested in that. And in fact, there's a very cool little mode in the game when you start in the settings menu called Cinema Siciliano or something, where essentially it turns everything kind of black and white and the audio is all distorted, so it feels like an old school spaghetti western. And I just thought, oh, that's a really cool niche thing I would never consider to do in this game. Some other niche, really cool ideas that I really enjoyed are you, of course, have a selection of weapons that you can buy and choose from for your loadout. In terms of firearms, you have different knife loadouts and 3 different styles of knives, which are interesting. One of them is a throwing knife. One of them is a combat knife where you can do a one-shot kill in combat, no problem. And the third one just has high durability. And so you will need the knife to do other things like open locked doors, locked boxes for money to buy more things. Of course, there's a huge vehicle selection, and this one sort of special edition turbo vehicle that basically has max stats and everything, so you're just zooming across the Italian countryside and just nothing at all. And The other really cool thing is you have all of your buffs, your health, aiming, ammo buffs are done in this rosary. And so you have a medallion in the rosary and certain beads you can replace with sub components or other beads that give you things like better accuracy and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. So there's kind of this religious aspect. You know, they have a baptism in a church. They have, you know, it's just a throwback to a time when religion played a much more central role in society in general, that there really was nothing in these environments. It very much was like the Wild West. You have like the library, the general store, the church, and the saloon, and that's it. And, you know, and the people kind of stand out much more in the environment because there's less stuff in it. And again, all these gameplay elements that I've talked about, I like them, but it kind of feels wasted again because, yeah, it's cool that you have all these, you know, mechanics, but you don't really you're not really given an opportunity or an incentive to really use them outside the story missions. And the thing is, the story missions themselves, they're mostly dialogue and walking, and so it's one of these games I would just never replay one of these games, mainly because the story isn't that amazing, and the fact that a lot of it, of the 12 chapters and 12, you know, things, it's just that a lot of it's just walking. It's a lot of walking and talking, and the actual gameplay and shooting, whatever, kind of really comes in at around 20% of the game. So it's like, okay, well, what's the point? If the point is the story, you have to do a really good story, or there's really no point to engage with it. So yeah, I kind of went through it, I beat it, but I kind of felt it waning at certain points, and just a lot of chapters just felt kind of like filler. I mean, there were some good points, some good characters, but overall, as a whole, it wasn't really great, and it really wasn't to my expectations, unfortunately. But I can't say it's a bad game. I can definitely say it's a good game. It was a decent experience, and I think decent is the correct term to use with this kind of game. Anyway, I can't think of anything else to say about it except that. So with that being said, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.